What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today and over the last few weeks, I've seen some videos from other NBA commentator YouTube channels talking and making a ranking of all the futures of every NBA team. So I figured, why not? Why don't I participate in this trend? And let's go ahead and give my point of view on the subject. I have a fairly similar view to a lot of people for some teams, but some of them I'm a little less lenient on. And obviously not really any NBA team has absolutely no future talent. There's not really an F tier in my opinion. We've got D down here, but I would keep S through D as the normal tier rankings for this, at least this series or this video, because I don't think any team is absolutely terrible. But I do think that there are some bad teams, and I have seen a few of the videos. Most of them have this same sentiment as me, but starting off with the Brooklyn Nets, they have very little brightness in the next few years unless they get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to come back, or they make a massive trade for, some stars or some young players. The Brooklyn Nets are going to have a really tough time getting a bright future out of this team unless they make a really good trade, or if they keep Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. As I said, that's going to allow them to, maybe have a chance at a finals run or something like that, which maybe isn't the future, but it's still something that has a very, very big part of the future of the franchise. Lakers are another team that really don't have a bright future at all. You've got LeBron. You've got, Talon Horton-Tucker. LeBron's old as dirt, but he's still playing at a high level, so I think he's got a few years left in him. THT is a young guy that's good. Austin Reeves, maybe you could say. Anthony Davis is a guy they have that's still younger. He hasn't got out of his prime yet, but due to injuries and stuff like that, he just hasn't been able to, keep himself healthy on the court as much as they've needed him to. And with that, I think that basically stops their future from being as bright as it could be. So next up, I think those are the only teams that I would necessarily put in a D tier, but I do want to go ahead and put teams that let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum and go with teams that I'm definitely putting in the S tier of bright futures. I made a video about them a few days ago, but I believe that the Orlando Magic have the potential right now, if their roster doesn't change, from Paolo Banchero, Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, RJ Hampton, Wendell Carter Jr., you've got Mo Bamba, you've got all of these pieces. Jonathan Isaac, I know he hasn't played that much in a long time, but he's still a young guy. You've got all of these pieces that could become at least solid, and most of them look like they're going to be better than solid. Wendell Carter's a guy that I think flew under the radar last season. A lot of people didn't realize how well he played for the Magic, and I think he could be a really good NBA center across the next few years, and that's why I have to respect the Magic, and I have to put them in that S tier. I think this team has so much potential across the next few seasons, and that's about where I feel with the Toronto Raptors. Scottie Barnes, we know he's good. He won Rookie of the Year, but he has a very, very high ceiling, in my opinion. Rookie of the Year is just the beginning for Scottie Barnes. I think there's a chance that he becomes a top player in the NBA across the next few seasons. He could easily overcome top 10 in the NBA right now if he continues on this trajectory. And I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say. I really, really love Scottie Barnes as a player. I think he's got so much talent, and he just has a lot of room to grow. But I do have some teams that are already proven, in my opinion, that have a solid future. I'm going to put the Suns in A tier. Now, Chris Paul is 38, I believe. He's either 37 or 38, so obviously he's going to be gone in a few years, but you've got to take into account Devin Booker. Assuming they keep DeAndre Ayton, they obviously didn't want him on the Supermax, but you've got to do what you got to do. Assuming they keep DeAndre Ayton, assuming they keep Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and Devin Booker, they have a very, very good mold or core group of players. Unfortunately, they got rid of Jalen Smith. He's a guy that I think still has a lot of room to grow as an NBA player. Didn't really get a fair shakeup the first few seasons of his career, but I do think he has a lot of room to grow. So the Suns have guys after Chris Paul leaves, and once Chris Paul leaves, the only thing they really would need to worry about is replacing him at point guard with at least a manageable or a game manager. I think if these guys continue to grow, DeAndre Ayton could become a star if he isn't already considered one. Mikal Bridges has so much room to become a star small forward. He's already one of the better younger defenders in the league. I think he has a lot more room to grow, and that's why I would put the Suns in A tier, and that's where I'm going to put the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers have so much potential. I've said this, or I'm going to say this about a lot of teams. Very disappointed, though, with their finish to the season last year. I thought the Cavs definitely should have made the playoffs, and they definitely need to next season. There's a lot of what-ifs about Colin Sexton, whether or not he's on the roster the next few years, but at the end of the day, if you're even not taking him into account, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, and Evan Mobley, that trio alone is enough to put you in the A to S tier. Evan Mobley looks like he's going to be a great NBA player. Jarrett Allen finally took the leap. I've been waiting for him to take that leap so long in his career, but he finally took the leap into becoming an all-star. And Darius Garland is a guy that already is an all-star now at just a young age. He is. So the Cavs have so much room to grow. And now I'm going to go with guys that, you know, whether their team has a lot of future prospects, I think this team could be good just off of what they have on the roster as far as superstars go. First off, Luka Doncic and the Mavericks are an S tier pretty much instantly to me. This team's not very old. They don't have a lot of super old guys, but most of them outside of Luka are probably in that 25 to 30 range. Nobody really going over 30 that's, you know, like a veteran player, but they have some guys there. And losing Jalen Brunson does really hurt this team, but having Luka Doncic obviously completely saves you. This guy is one of the best NBA players in the league. He's such a strong player offensively and defensively. Even at a slow pace, he's just a guy that can get buckets no matter what you throw at him on the defensive side of the ball. So that's one of the reasons the Mavericks are up here, and that's another reason I'm putting the Celtics up here. Now, hopefully they don't make me regret this by trading all of their players for Kevin Durant like they looked like they were going to do, but if you take into account the core group this Celtics team has, especially with bringing in Malcolm Brogdon, you've got Horford, who's older but still has a few solid years left in my opinion, and then you've got Grant Williams, Marcus Smart. Maybe you can turn some of those other bench players. Derek White's there. He's only 29, 30, something like that. And then that's not even getting into Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, two superstars. Obviously, Jason Tatum takes the number one spot on the team, but Jaylen Brown still has a lot of room to grow as an offensive player, and his defensive side of the ball is amazing. This team is built for future success. They won last year. I'm surprised they made that finals run, but it is only going to improve in the future, and that's what makes me worry about them as a matchup in the Eastern Conference. This team looks like they're going to be very good for years to come, and obviously I'm going to put next up the Warriors in S tier. Now, this one could go two different ways. Their core right now, you could say they're aging. Klay Thompson didn't come back as the strongest player, and even coming off of a finals run, I think it's shown that he is not the same guy he used to be. Draymond Green, while good defensively, his offense has taken a significant step back across the last few seasons, and despite the finals run, he doesn't look like the same guy. But I think with Steph Curry, who's, yes, aging as a star, but he is still in his prime, and he has plenty of time left in his career to at least win another championship, maybe multiple in my opinion. Steph Curry's there for the next few years, and they already have their next dynasty set up. You've got Jordan Poole, you've got Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, James Wiseman's still there. I think a lot of people forget James Wiseman is still a Golden State Warrior. You've got Andrew Wiggins, all-star starter Andrew Wiggins at that. This team is set up perfectly to just morph right into the next team, and it's kind of crazy to look at. I didn't think the Warriors were going to be that good, as I have to wipe something off my screen. Didn't think they were going to get back to being this good without Kevin Durant, much less having this bright of a future. Now, next up, I don't really have any other teams that I would say are definitive dynasties, but I'm going to put my Bucks in A tier. Now, I would put them in S tier, but I want to have as little bias as possible. We have an aging roster. We're one of the older teams in the league. Giannis is 27, but other than that, our main stars are all 30 and above. Chris Middleton's 32. Drew Holiday's older than that. This team is an old roster. That's not to say we can't win anything this year. I think we still have a perfect chance across the next few seasons to win, but we're going to have to replace guys. Wesley Matthews is way up there in age. George Hill is up there in age. We saw him just completely fall apart last season. He played terrible for us down the stretch. Brooke Lopez is a guy that, while I love him, he only continues to get worse with age, and a guy that's that tall and, you know, already slow is only going to continue to get worse as he gets older, and I think we're going to have to replace him across the next few seasons. But The but is Giannis Antetokounmpo. We are A tier or above. I could argue S tier just because we have Giannis. Now, if Giannis leaves, that's a different story. We're back to being a bad team. But at 27 years old, he still has what? Till he's probably 34, 35 in his prime, and he is going to be a top NBA player in all of those seasons, barring injuries, knock on wood. This is a great future setup for the Bucks. All they would have to do is revamp around Giannis again, and that's something that I completely believe in our front office and their ability to do, whether that's through the draft over a few rebuilding years or through trades and signings. I think the Bucks have an excellent chance to continue their success even once Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday kind of get too old for them to play as well as they have. All right, and next up, I actually do have another team in S tier. Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies last year surprised everyone, and I mean everyone, with their playoff run. I think a lot of people thought they were going to be good, but I don't think anybody, including myself, really understood how good of a team they were going to be, and Ja Morant looked like he could be a top 5 NBA player. Now, hopefully, injuries don't make us regret that or make him regret jumping as much as he does, but at the end of the day, he is an outstanding NBA player. He looks like he's going to be really good in the next few years, obviously, and he's only going to continue to get better. So that's why they are, in my opinion, an S tier team. Now, future-wise, the Los Angeles Clippers are another team that I think is an A tier roster. Now, they may not have all the pieces of guys that are rookies or sophomores, but Kawhi Leonard and Paul George still have some time in their prime, in my opinion. They have a good opportunity to be a top team this year and in the years to come, especially with them signing John Wall. And obviously, injuries have kind of prevented them from having a good season altogether, but I do think this year is kind of finally the year for them. Hopefully, I don't regret saying that. Hopefully, injuries don't happen again. They've been hit by so many injuries, just holding them back, and that's something that I kind of hate to see. But next up is a team that I hate to do this to. The Charlotte Hornets, I'm putting in C tier. Now, Miles Bridges would have changed this, but obviously we don't mess with him anymore. We're not cool with Miles Bridges anymore, and he is basically should be out of the NBA, in my opinion, at least for a few seasons. And outside of Miles Bridges, maybe PJ Washington, James Bouknight didn't show much. Kai Jones, JT Thor, a lot of guys that still haven't proven themselves on the NBA level yet. And outside of LaMelo Ball, who, while I like as a player, is, in my opinion, a little overrated as a player. I don't think he's the next up-and-coming star point guard. I think he's just a little bit more of a higher quality starter. I don't think he's going to be more than that throughout his career, but that's why the Hornets are at C tier. Outside of LaMelo, I don't really see much promising young talent out, and unlike the Hornets, the Detroit Pistons, they have a great young core. I wouldn't put them in S tier just yet because we don't know what a lot of this core can do and if a lot of them can take that next step. I love Sadiq Bey as a player, but can he take another leap? I love Isaiah Stewart, but he kind of seems like a guy whose play is limited to where he's already at. This team has some bright spots. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, the guys I just mentioned, and I think with Jalen Duren, it's another opportunity to prove themselves with a young center, and hopefully they can get him to be really good because I love his play from Memphis, and I think he's going to be a good center in the NBA. But at the end of the day, they haven't proven themselves enough for me to put them in S tier. And kind of like the Hornets, but on a worse scale, I'm going with the Spurs and C tier. Now, I'm kind of just picking through these teams, and I will get to every team, but the San Antonio Spurs are a rebuilding team. They just started their rebuild. They've offloaded a bunch of veterans. I mean, Doug McDermott is one of their starting power forwards. So this team is just bad, and they don't even have that many bright spots that are proven themselves. I mean, Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell are the first names that come to mind, but then you've got Trey Jones, you've got Josh Primo, you've got all these pieces of guys that are young rookies, sophomores, juniors in the league, but are they going to be good? We have no idea yet. Joshua Primo didn't do that good last year, but he was on limited playing time. I think he'll be better than he was last year, and it's just going to be a time or a little bit before we can really see where they're going to be going as a team. And now I'll probably just go in order on the rest of these because I don't see... the Thunder are a team that I think A tier is where I'll go with them. I think Chet Holmgren has a lot of talent, a lot of potential. Josh Giddey, obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but outside of that, they don't have too many players. I mean, Pokusevski is a meme at this point, and hopefully he ends up being really good, but he hasn't shown anything noticeably great just yet, in my opinion, and that's a big problem with the Thunder. They have a lot of young guys, but not many of them have been able to develop into great players. The Houston Rockets, I'm going to have to go with B tier. Jabari Smith Jr. looked a little underwhelming in G League, or not G League, Summer League play. Jalen Green is obviously a great player. Kevin Porter Jr., the controversies last year with him, we don't really know where he's going to stand in Houston for the foreseeable future, so he could be on the way out. I am a big fan of Alperen Sengun. Obviously, a lot of people are, but outside of those guys, Usman Garuba is another guy, Josh Christopher. Outside of those guys, I don't know what this Rockets team is going to develop to be. I think they still have a few years before they can be a playoff contender if all of these guys develop into good NBA players, and that's if they all do. Obviously, I think Jalen Green's definitely a hard lock for a great NBA player at one point in his career, but will he develop sooner rather than later? I don't know. I think the Rockets might have to make some signings or trades in order to be a good team in the future, but they still have at least an above average future in my opinion, and that's where we get to the 76ers, who I'm going to throw in the, I guess it's only fair that I throw them in the A tier. Joel Embiid is an MVP caliber player. Obviously, he's great. James Harden's aging, though. Tobias Harris is aging. Tyrese Maxey, we don't know how high he can grow as a player, but obviously right now he's become a very, very, very good player for the 76ers. I love Tyrese Maxey, and the way he played in the playoffs, if he can start that next season going forward, they are a really, really tough team to contend against in the Eastern Conference. But at the end of the day, a lot of their roster and their core is built to win now, maybe not so much in the future. That's another thing, though, with Joel Embiid compared to guys like Devin Booker, compared to guys like Giannis. I don't know if he's going to have the longevity. We've seen so many of these big men get injured as fast as they became good. We don't know if he's going to be able to stay relevant for years to come, because 7-footers struggle to do that, and he's kind of a bigger guy. I think it's different with Giannis, who's a little bit more agile. He's a little bit more nimble on his feet. Joel Embiid isn't quite as quick on his feet and as easy when he runs and jumps and stuff on his knees as Giannis is. So that's why I would kind of worry about the 76ers future and whether or not Joel Embiid is a guy that will be able to, sustain the success that he's had now. Next up, we have the Wizards I have to throw the Wizards in C tier. I like Denny Advia. I think he can be a solid NBA player. I like Rui Hachimura. He had a 2K card that I really liked, a Ruby, a sneaker Ruby, sleeper Ruby. I don't know why I said sneaker. But outside of those guys, if we're being honest, I mean, Kyle Kuzma maybe, and Corey Kispert has shown some signs, but outside of those guys, who all may just be solid to below average NBA players, the Wizards don't have much going for them, and Kristaps Porzingis and Bradley Beal aren't going to win you finals games, and they're not going to win you playoff series, in my opinion. So I don't think the Wizards are in a good spot. I think they have to get rid of Bradley Beal at some point if they want to mortgage their future and improve the future that they, are very close to ruining for their franchise and their organization. And that's just how I feel about the Wizards. I didn't like the re-signing of Bradley Beal. I think this team could have done so much more with that money. They could have done so much more with a year of just really bad tanking. Tanking for Victor Wembanyama, somebody big like that. That's what they need in Washington, and that's why I'm a little underwhelmed by this Wizards team. Next up, we have the Hawks, who I'm going to throw in A tier. I think the Hawks have a really bright future. Trae Young, still young. DeJounte Murray, probably my favorite pickup by any team in the offseason. They did a great job trading for him and, keeping it relatively simple. Just some picks, and Danilo Gallinari, who by the end of last year had kind of lost his spot in the rotation. They did get rid of Kevin Huerter as well, but what are you going to do? You got DeJounte Murray in return. You have John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka Okongwu. Clint Capella's older, but he's still a solid center. And then they've got guys off the bench that look like they could have some talent. This Hawks team has a lot of room to grow. They look like they could be a contender this year and the next few years to come. That's why I think this team is going to be really good in the future. We'll go with the Bulls next in the B tier. I think they have an okay future. I don't think DeMar DeRozan's a guy that you're going to build around for the foreseeable future. He's aging. He's kind of getting close to where he doesn't need to be your number one star. Zach LaVine still has a lot of room to be the solid and above average NBA player that he has been, an all-star guy that's not going to become a superstar, but he will win you some games with his offense. Alex Caruso is good, but he's not great. Lonzo Ball, maybe he becomes that second star or the first star on the Bulls in the next few years, but I don't know if that's going to be something that Lonzo can do. Vucevic is older, Drummond's older, Kobe White hasn't really showed what he should be. Patrick Williams is another guy that hasn't had a lot of playing time since his rookie season, and I think he can be better than he's shown, but obviously they don't have that it guy that's coming up, that guy that is a solidified superstar, best player, top player in the NBA, and I think that's what hurts their future compared to like teams like the Bucks, the Suns, the 76ers are up here. They don't have the guy that you're like, this guy's going to be great. He already is great, and he's going to keep this team from being bad no matter what happens around him. And next up, we got the Utah Jazz. Now, I can't recall all the people they got in the Rudy Gobert trade. I know it's a lot of draft picks, and the thing about draft picks and having so many of them is you actually have to make the right selections with the draft picks. You can't just have a bunch and hope that one of them hits. You have to choose the right guys for your team. And if they trade Donovan Mitchell, they're going to have a lot more draft picks. And they got a lot of young guys, but most of them are unproven or not the greatest players just yet. I'm a huge fan of Jared Vanderbilt, though. I liked him. I like Malik Beasley. I like a lot of the guys they got. But I don't know if they're going to win you playoff series or help you in the future become a contender without, stars above them. Like Donovan Mitchell is a guy that is not on the same level, obviously, as like Jared Vanderbilt or, Malik Beasley, stuff like that. There's two tiers of players. You got the stars, the guys that can lead your team, and then you've got really good starters, role players, stuff like that. And some of those guys are just in the role player tier. So that's why I don't think their future is an A or S tier, even though they have as many draft picks as they do. Now, the Miami Heat, I have to go with B tier. I don't think they have the it factor. Jimmy Butler is a great NBA player, but how many years is he going to continue being at that level? Bam Adebayo isn't going to win you games. He's not going to become your number one star, and if he does, chances are you're not winning anything with him as your number one player. Kyle Lowry took a giant leap down last year. They just really didn't have much success from him in the playoffs. PJ Tucker's on his way out. Obviously, he's older. You have Max Strus is a younger up-and-coming guy. Gabe Vincent is kind of younger. But outside of them, you've got they drafted Nikola Jovic this last season. He looks like he could be decent. You draft Tyler Hero a few years ago, and he has become one of the better picks in that draft, a kind of underrated guy. And outside of that, I don't know what the Heat are going to do. They never made a trade for a star like they always are rumored to do. They were the first team to really go heavy at the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, but obviously they swung and they missed, and I think that leaves them in a bad spot. They didn't secure up their future with a superstar player, but they're still going to be a good team for years to come, and that's why I kind of keep them at the middle of the road. I don't know how many years they're going to be finals contenders, but I think across the next few seasons, they'll still be playoff contenders, and maybe you'll see them do the odd run to the conference finals or something like that, and that's where we get down to these final teams. And I'm going to start with the Timberwolves. We have, 7 teams left, and once we take them away, it'll be 6, and the Timberwolves, in my opinion, my humble opinion, are an A-tier team. Now, I could put them in S tier. I understand if you argue for S tier because Anthony Edwards looks like he could be that guy. But D'Angelo Russell just isn't the same he used to be. I don't think Rudy Gobert is going to become some miraculously great offensive player once he gets to Minnesota. So he doesn't really change to become a better player and make this Timberwolves team much better. I don't think, obviously, they're going to be better with the defense of him. And I think Karl Anthony Towns has kind of capped out. And I think he's a little overrated of an NBA star, but he's still a really, really good player. I think A tier is probably safe for them. Zion Williamson and the Pelicans, B tier. And you might hate to say that, or you might hate me if I say that, because this team has so much potential. But the real question is, where is Zion? What is Zion doing? Will he be playing? Will he not be playing? I mean, that's really all that matters about this team. If Zion continues to come back and play like he used to, then obviously this is an S-tier future because he could be a superstar for, 15 years. But if he comes back, continues to get injured and all that, I think middle of the road is an okay spot for them. Next up, the Knicks. I'll go B tier for the Knicks. They've got some bright future spots on their roster, but RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, I think the big thing is what they have to do or what they end up doing with Julius Randle, whether they get rid of him or let him play out his contract. That probably has a lot of weight on, where they're going to be as a team across the next few seasons, and that's where really their bright future can come and go. And draft selections haven't been that great. The trade and the draft last year, or this last draft, wasn't a good trade. Jalen Brunson is a good point guard. It's been a while since we've seen a guy of his level in New York, and I like the pickup. Maybe not for the contract, but I still like the pickup for the team. I can't justify moving them into A tier, though, just because they haven't shown any success from it. Next up, we've got the Pacers, who I'm going to throw in B tier. I like Tyrese Halliburton enough to throw them in B tier. I'm interested to see what Benedict Mathurin can do. I like Chris Duarte, all those guys. But most of all, very, very interested in Jalen Smith. I liked him coming out of college. I thought he had potential. I thought the Suns might have given him a chance to play at, from injuries and stuff, and he did get a little bit of time, but I'm hoping in Indiana he can get a lot more time. Hey, you're going to be bad, throw him in the starting lineup. Let's see what he can do. And I think he can be a solid NBA starter. So that's why I'll put the Pacers in B tier. They have a lot of guys that I really, really like as NBA players. Tyrese Halliburton is one of my favorites, young and up-and-coming guys. I think he's very, very undervalued. And Sacramento Kings traded Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis. And if I'm being honest, they're in the same category. I'm not the biggest De'Aaron Fox guy, but he is a good point guard. Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox had a good end to the season last year, but obviously they still missed the playoffs. I didn't love the Sabonis trade. Davion Mitchell's okay. Keegan Murray looks really good, but what are you going to say after Summer League? Can he be as good as he was always? I don't know about that. They just don't have the guy that I think can develop into a superstar, and I think De'Aaron Fox has kind of maxed out his potential as an NBA player. But hey, who knows? Maybe they rebuild this team or revamp it to be built more into his style of play, because a lot of the teams across the last few seasons have kind of been built for other players, it seems like, or other styles of players. The Trailblazers are a team that I think could fit into the C tier. Shaedon Sharpe could be good. We don't know a lot about how good he's going to be in the NBA. Damian Lillard's aging, in my opinion. They should have traded him and, rebuilt around Anthony Simons. And one guy that looks like a really, really good young player on their roster, Jeremy Grant's aging, who they just traded for. Yusuf Nurkic is aging. You've got Mason Plumlee, Cody Zeller. They're pretty much the same guy. A lot of older guys on this team as they tried to revamp the roster and try to contend next year. I don't know if it's going to work for them, honestly, but they don't have a bright future as far as young prospects go. And the last team on this list, the Denver Nuggets, it's only fair that I put them in A tier because of the teams like Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo in the other sides. Jokic is a proven MVP. He's a proven winner. They do get Jamal Murray back this year. They get Michael Porter Jr. back from injury. So they're going to be good this year. The next few years, how good will they be? I don't know, but they've got Jokic, so that's probably a good sign for how good of a roster they're going to have. And that is my final ranking of all 30 NBA teams and how bright their future is. What do you guys think about my list? Did you think it's wrong? I mean, go ahead and comment down below about your team. You're probably going to think they're in the wrong spot. That's the fun part about sports. You can talk about anything. You can disagree, but let's just keep it civil. I love talking to you guys in the comments. And yeah, basically that's all I have for today. If you guys did enjoy this, thank you for watching. Hit the like button and subscribe. Turn post notifications on so you never miss a video. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time. Peace.